we definitely learnt the art of, kind of going out with a fiver and hopefully coming back with a fiver.
I remember those days. What do you do to keep purpose really, really front and centre?
I think we have kind of regular communication channels and ways of colleagues being able to speak to exactly what's going on in their local context or the country that they're in or the project or programs that they've been helping to support. So it's just always making sure that the messaging and the work that we're doing is sort of front and centre as much as possible. And, we're sort of sharing that communication. Welcome to the Deep Sea Dive, the place where we take a dive into culture, communications, change and coaching and have some really great conversations along the way. My name is Lottie.
And I'm Lorna.
And we want to introduce our extra special. Well, you're special in lots of ways, Joyce, but to be fair, special because you are the first guest in our new format podcast. Welcome to our little humble Whitechapel abode. And this is, I'll let you introduce yourself, Joyce. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. So thanks for having me on. I think we're going to have a really good conversation today. So I'm Joyce Idoniboye. I'm currently Chief People Officer at Oxfam.
Yeah.
But I am general kind of enjoyer of life. Good. Zester for life.
She is a woman after our own heart, right? And so,
Joyce.
Full disclosure, well, not that it's a trade secret or anything, we met back in May, didn't we, Joyce?
We did.
Where I had the pleasure of speaking to you at the Engagement Summit.
Mm-hmm.
And we had 20 minutes of wonderful connection between us and 600 people watching,
yes.
Of course, all with their funny little headsets. And at the end of that interview, I said to Lorna, we have to have more engagement with this wonderful woman, and here you are. So thank you so much. It's so special that you're the one that is our first ever guest. So thank you for being here.
I'm delighted. I'm hoping that I can live up to it now. Yeah. The first guest, there's a bit of pressure
Joyce,
there, but I think I'll be all right.
The bar's quite low. Don't worry.
Don't Lee Elliston there. It's poor old Lee Elliston.
Oh no, I didn't mean in terms of guests. No, I just meant in terms of
previous guests. You were excellent.
You were all excellent. Yeah. Sorry, previous guests.
The bar, as we've set it for the first 2 episodes of the new podcast, is quite
She actually
low.
knew what I meant, right?
I did know what you meant, but I'm just teasing you.
Yeah.
And anyway, it's nice to give a shout out to the other guests. We remember them before we got all fancy schmancy in a podcast studio.
Yeah, love
with
the studio.
with chai latte and all
chai
that.
latte with oat milk.
Yeah.
And Alex with the chai.
And
Alex with the chai, which is now his actual surname.
Actual name. He's
going to have to go and change it by Depop.
Yeah, he's no longer studio manager, Alex.
He's Alex with the chai.
Yeah. I like that. It's got a nice ring to it.
I think so. Yeah.
Maybe we'll get him a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alex with the chai.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, should we talk about Joyce?
Yeah. Sorry.
Let's do that. That's fine.
Let us do that.
We had Lottie had the pleasure of interviewing you, and she said, you've got to meet Joyce. We have to get her on the podcast. And would I spend some time kind of getting a fuller kind of the story of Joyce from you? And we had a really, really, from my perspective at least, a really excellent, rewarding chat for me.
Yeah, I loved it.
It covered a lot of ground. Yes. But it had this kind of anchor and this theme of authentic leadership, which I know is really dear to your heart.
Mm-hmm.
I think we sort of really brought that to life towards the end of the conversation. So if with your permission, we're not going to try and recreate that magic because it was a little bit like, those conversations happen. But I loved the way that we started by just having you tell the story of who you are and how you came to be Chief People Officer at Oxfam. So that's the first extremely open question.
Yeah. It is. How long have we got?
Well, we've actually
till 6.
Got till 6, to be fair. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll start with my childhood, really. It wasn't easy, so I'm not going to lie about that. I would sort of split it into 3 sections, probably. There was the section of being age 1 to 4, which is when I lived with a foster family in Weston-super-Mare in Somerset. And then there was a period of me between the ages of 4 and 18 when I lived with a different foster family
down in Portsmouth. But there was a 1 year sort of spell within that when I was age 9. So from 9 to 10, where I was actually in a children's home, which was in Manor House, East Ham. So it was, it wasn't the easiest upbringing. I can't say that it was. I learned a lot from it. And obviously hindsight is a wonderful thing. Yeah. But in the moment, it was really, really challenging. Probably less so between the ages of 1 to 4. But I think when I was a bit older and, the move down to Portsmouth, I found that really, really challenging. I didn't live with foster parents that looked like me. And also it wasn't the fostering that is the kind of regulated, authority-led fostering. It was the private fostering. It was the advertising nursery world, which was in a library kind of fostering, and all and anyone could apply essentially. So it needed the rigour of parents to really make sure that, their children were going to a good situation. Yeah. And actually, I think there was a documentary about this on the TV, and it was about a whole sort of farming phenomenon, which is what happened when lots of West African sort of immigrants came over to the UK. It was a practice that, it was just something that they did. They wanted to have the children looked after, and that was the way in which they did it.
So that's how you ended up in foster care and in the care system. It was a decision by your parents?
Yeah, so I think my dad had gone back to Nigeria. So the last photo I've got of me and my dad together, I think I was 1, and I have no memory of him or being around him or life with him. So I was actually born in London, Wimbledon. So then it was my mum who had 4 children, all young, because we're all kind of, there's like a year and a half between us. So I think it was then the choice that she made. And obviously I can't blame her for her choice. She made the choice that she did in that moment in time. But I think those choices probably did really sort of change the trajectory of my life. And I think in hindsight, there are probably many good things or positive things that I kind of take out of it. When we talk about authenticity, and I know we'll go on to talk about that later in representation, that's why those themes are so important to me, because, in Portsmouth, and it was a kind of small town in Portsmouth that I was in as well, there just wasn't anything, if you imagine growing up in the 80s in that environment, you are, apart from your siblings, we were really, there was just no diversity. So it was really, really tough in terms of, behaviours, how people were. You're not in a big city. It was really challenging. And then you're living with a family who also don't look like you and don't represent you. So I guess I spent probably quite a lot of my childhood not really kind of feeling quite nomadic, really. It's like, who am I?
Not knowing who you are, what's my identity?
And how do I connect? What's my actual, what's my identity? There was a period where I was in a children's home, and it was a really interesting period in my life, actually. For that kind of year, there was a lot of structure, and there was fairness, which is, something that I hadn't been used to in the foster home that I was in. And you kind of knew how the system worked. You queued up, you got your breakfast, you queued up for
there was certainty and routine.
There was certainty and routine, and I got to learn politics real quick. It's like, okay, who do I need to align myself with in here?
Genuine, actual hard but life lessons that clearly you've applied to the rest of your kind of personal and work life, I imagine.
Yeah, definitely. Learned a lot of lessons from that.
So what happened when you were 18?
I moved out of home.
Yeah.
And at the time I was in college, I was doing hospitality and catering course. I was working, so I was waitressing in the evenings, and at the weekends I had a job. So that kind of paid for my rent, and I did or didn't have money left over to basically eat or live. Yeah. It was quite challenging, but I was determined to just make it through college, because I just thought, once I get through college, I'm off to London. I just had it in my mind that that's what I was going to do. Kind of growing up, I'd watched MTV, like The Base and The Box, and it's like, there are black people that look like that with like braids and they might live here. On. Yes.
But isn't that interesting, right? Because we make some of those decisions about what we can be, what's possible for us, based on what we see around us and what we see adults do. And that was where you saw people that you could identify with. You could see a piece of you.
Yeah.
You're looking around and you're not seeing a piece of you with possibility anywhere locally.
Yeah.
But that was where that was for you.
I was like, I need to get there.
Yeah.
And once I finish college, that's what I'll be doing.
Yeah.
It was a good time, even though I was completely broke, had no money. Sometimes getting to college, it was like I'd pretend to be asleep on the train so that the conductor wouldn't ask to see my ticket. But I had literally no money, but it was fun. I just had to learn how to just be resourceful, get it done, try and budget for myself. I guess I was the person at college that wasn't at home. So, my friends would come over. We definitely learnt the art of, kind of going out with a £5 and hopefully coming back with a £5.
I remember those days. I never came home with a £5. I was not that frugal, but those days where you could go out on a £5
and also just try and sweet talk your way into as much free stuff as you possibly can.
A few drinks and free entry,
Oh, I've got a great story I'll tell you one day about when I did that in Paris.
Yeah.
The biggest freeloading event of my entire life, but that's for another day.
I need to hear about that.
We'll talk about that.
There was a skill in going out on a £5 back then, wasn't there?
Yeah, there definitely was. So that's that period of time just taught me a lot. During the course that I was doing, I had gone to the library and I'd just found this book which was just full of all these hotels in London, and I thought, I want to be a hotel manager. And so I just used the college's outbox and sent all these letters off, just speculative, just thinking, maybe hopefully I'll get something come through. And there was one hotel in Gatwick that where the operations manager had asked me to come in and come and meet with him. And so I did. And he was just like, why should I give you the job? And I think he just saw there was a hunger there, like she wants to make something work. Really, I had to say, I'll just graft and all of the rest of it. And I think he just believed in me in that moment, and he gave me the chance to share a hotel room with somebody else. And so I had somewhere to stay. And so literally when I finished college, we went on a cruise. Our tutor took us on this kind of clubby, ravey cruise around
sounds like my kind
France,
of cruise.
France and Spain. And literally, as the boat docked back, I had a bag with me, and I got on I was getting on the train, and I remember at the time a lot of my friends, they didn't say goodbye because they actually didn't think I was going, but I did, and I just didn't look back. I just left.
Wow. Yeah, and it's interesting. You often just need that one person to believe in you, right? Whether it's a mentor or a manager at work or someone that gives you the first opportunity. That just unlocks that key to basically changing the trajectory of the rest of your life.
And the other thing that I took from that was I don't know how many letters you said you sent to how many hotels, right? But it just takes one.
20.
20, right? And there's a real lesson in there in kind of tenacity and grit and, and as you say, being willing to graft. I hate the kind of the graft culture that we've got into now, but I do think there's something about really kind of believing in that grit and that tenacity and that keep going, right? Because that's what people will recognise when they do give you a shot.
Well, and having a kind of and having a dream, right? And I know that sounds ridiculous and like kind of Disney, but genuine. We were talking, we've talked about it in previous pods about this idea of actually.
Have a dream.
She always does a thing.
Have a dream.
You got a voice. You got
How
skills.
you gonna have a dream?
We didn't
Sorry.
script. We actually didn't script it. So
That's
Lorna
not
could have
Disney.
a
That's Gilbert and Sullivan. That's really uncool. Up in the least cool of this.
I'd rather be on Joyce's rave cruise.
With you than my Gilbert and Sullivan
Than
boat.
with you, mate.
All right, Tom.
Sorry.
Fair.
New best friend, enter stage right. No, this idea of actually having the idea of actually being able to dream big, right? And having a big, hairy, audacious vision and going, do you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to try and go for it, right? And actually, if you believe hard enough, often you get that break. And I think I just love that because it's a much personal mantra for me. It's like dream big, like nothing's off limits, go for it. So
I've done quite a few talks with school age kids about careers and opportunity. And I really, really believe in if you can't see it, you can't be it principle, right? That idea that children need role models, they need people that they can, and a breadth of them, right? Because how many of us went into, I don't know, teaching accountancy, working in a restaurant because that's what our mums or dads did.
Yeah.
And if you don't want to be what your mum and dad did, I didn't. Like,
or
what are your options?
Or you don't have that role model.
What are your options? And that, as you say, just one person that goes, I reckon you could do this.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a little leg up.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really important. I think at school that we had careers advice, and I'm trying to work out what it was. It was some sort of computer system that just like,
that.
yeah,
You
just
did
kind
that
of
weird
pushed out a receipt.
little test.
And yeah,
I can't remember what mine
my
said.
receipt, I think one of them was like, I should be a florist. And I can't remember what the other one said, but they were just really random
So
things.
random. Early AI, like random word generator.
It was
You can
awful.
be
It was like
an
some kind of terrible
optometrist.
sorting hat, wasn't it? It was like this awful, crappy sorting hat of
Yeah.
like, you're
Yeah.
going to work in a travel agency, and you're going to be a florist,
Yeah.
and you're going to work behind the tills at Sainsbury's,
Yeah, exactly.
and you can be a rocket scientist.
Yeah,
Like,
the options were limited and broad at the same time. So it was a
did
bit
not
of
help
that.
me one bit. I bet it didn't. Did it? It used
Well, she didn't become a florist,
Made you
so
just
obviously
go-
not.
No, I just,
WTF.
I was like, no, that's not really me.
Yeah.
I was always creative. Like that was my escape. Like I loved,
Yeah.
like tapestries, knitting.
But you can just tell by the way you
drawing,
present yourself,
all of
right?
that was
You've got
just my
creativity
thing.
running
Yeah.
through your soul, I reckon.
Your canvas. So I think you
Yeah.
can just kind of, you know, I love all of that.
Yeah, yeah. So you got your break. You started
Got my
working
break.
with the Gatwick Hotel.
Yes, I did indeed. And I learned a lot from that experience. Working on night reception, you see a lot of things.
Right.
And
It's
we
like
used to have
working
the
of-
air crew as
yeah.
well. So
Yeah.
we saw a lot of things.
Yeah.
What I became really good at was just thinking on my feet and just trying to resolve situations because there just weren't, at night, there weren't very many staff around.
Yeah.
So you kind of just had to think on your feet, really. And then a year later, when that operations manager left, he asked me to go with him to become a front office supervisor at
So the
his
same
hotel
guy,
in
the guy that had
Kensington.
hired you,
Yeah,
then took you with him.
yeah, which was really nice. I
Sorry,
was like,
studio manager Alex. Like, I've got to
I
sit
was
on.
trying
You've
to
got,
interrupt.
I've got to sit on my hands.
Sit nice and still.
Sorry. Sit still.
So he took you with you to where did you go? That another hotel, I'm assuming.
It was another hotel. It was in Kensington, but this time I was front office supervisor, so I was so chuffed. You know, I just when people were asking for duty manager, they just didn't expect to see me. I was like 19.
Love that. Love
Braids. Nails,
Love it.
every colour under
Yeah.
the sun.
Yeah.
And they'd be like, "Where's the duty manager?" It's like, "Yeah,
You're
she's
talking
here.
to-
Hello.
She's here."
Joyce, did you enjoy and do you that element of surprising people, like surprising their perceptions, knowing that there's that perception there, and then
Yeah,
shocking them or surprising them?
Yeah, especially when they hear, you know, my name's Joyce. It's like, oh, Joyce. Yeah, my aunt's called that, or my nan's called that.
To be
you
fair,
know?
my great aunt was the lovely great aunt Joyce. Not gonna
I
lie.
knew it. There's always an Aunt Joyce or a Nan
It's
Joyce.
it's prime
Yeah.
for revival, that name,
Right?
though, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like, you've
I
had
think so.
all
It's quite
sorts
retro,
of-
isn't it?
It's lovely.
Vintage.
It's like
Vintage.
Mabel and all those
Yeah.
like really beautiful names that are coming.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Joyce.
Iris
yeah.
is back. Joyce can be back. I reckon.
Yeah,
Joyce
I
is
think
back.
Joyce
She's
needs to be
back.
back.
Yeah.
Joyce- this
Kick the
Joyce
door
never went
down,
away.
Joyce.
So yeah, proving people wrong.
Yeah, definitely. When people say, you know, you can't do something, I remember my college tutor. He didn't know the situation. He didn't know I was out of home and I was working and things like that. But he said one day we just had one of those talks, and he said, "Look, I don't know what's going on, but you're not going to pass this course. It's just not going to happen." It's like, okay,
I'll prove you wrong.
Now watch, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
pass with distinction. So,
Yes.
you know, it's just, I think when someone says no, you can't, that's when I think, yeah, actually, I'm gonna go for it.
Has that been a bit of a theme for you in your career, Joyce?
I would say it has been a theme. When I kind of came out of the hotel industry, my first role within HR was in Willis, which is an insurance broking company, and it was literally pinstripes, middle-aged white men.
Yeah.
That's the truth of it.
Yeah.
I remember walking in on my first day. I had to do lots of testing. So there was like lots of verbal reasoning, numerical testing before I even had interviews. And, you know, I was told that I was successful with the testing, and they were testing me against ethnic group and then FTSE 100 managers. Yeah, that's how.
Sorry, what?
Yeah.
They were testing you against ethnic group.
Minority group, yep. And then against FTSE 100 middle managers. And, you know, my scores were still coming out well. So I got the
Doesn't
job.
matter which way they tried to slice it, you were still awesome.
I got the job.
Sorry
I got
about
the job.
that, Willis.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're much better than that now.
There are so many disclaimers we need for this podcast.
Yes.
We're already up to about 6.
Yeah.
It's all right. You've not said the A word yet, so we're rocking and rolling.
I'm not going to. This is not going to be a trademark.
This is not that one.
Yeah, it's not coming out.
And this was a long time ago. And it was all part of this kind of psychometric testing and the assessment piece. So it is just what it is at the time. But I still got in and I was there. And I had a pinstripe suit, but I also had red braids. I had I need to keep a sense of myself.
Yeah.
And I remember my very first day going up to the canteen, and that's where I saw some black staff and they were making sandwiches. And I remember them high-fiving me. And it was just another sort of clocked in my mind how important representation was. But it was a really interesting place to navigate. Again, I had a couple of managers that really believed in me. The global HR director did, and I ended up doing loads and loads of projects for him. Yeah. But they sponsored me through uni in the evening, so I was able to do my CIPD and everything else. And I learned politics, I learned how to navigate really easily and, well, not really easily, but I learned how to navigate structures.
And I think what I'm picking up when I hear you talk about these people who have made the difference, right, is this important role that the line manager plays in workplaces, right? That it can be a force for good and can be a force for not good, right? That whole kind of cliche that people don't quit their companies, they quit their managers.
Yeah.
And these managers who really care and who really lean in and who want to make the difference genuinely have so much impact. We can all remember our best and our worst managers. You've already recalled a couple of them and actually how they made them us feel.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that manager that you've described and that your first manager in the hospitality, this is easy for me to say, with the hotels. They could spot potential. They were looking for and could spot and develop potential. And that's actually quite a rare skill in a manager. Can we come back to, there's something that you just said and we kind of, it passed by quite quietly, but it's something that I really resonated with me when we first speak, which is I really need to hold on to myself here. I really need to, keep my identity, I think is what I took from that. Could you tell me a bit more about that? This idea of, you've gone to London, you're some way through your career, but this real idea of hanging on to who you are. So every so often you get in these glimmers of seeing people who you identify with you look like you and they're not where you are, right? So you've got to really hold on to you tight.
And I was fiercely protective of me because I'd spent so long just kind of not really knowing very much about my culture, who I was, where I came from. When I came to London, I just absorbed myself in food, cocoa, but I just absorbed myself in all of it, just trying to really develop that understanding.
Was that the first time you'd ever really had the opportunity to look to your culture?
Yeah, it really was. So for me, it was once I started doing that, I was just very, very protective of it. And I thought, no matter where I'm working, I'm still going to be me. There was that side to me, definitely at that age where, I liked a weekend, I liked going out at the weekend and, I liked to have fun. But when I was at work, it was, working really hard. I just wanted to just kind of keep hold of some sense of identity. And if that was my hair, if that was how I did my nails, whatever it was this is just, this is part of me.
And were you lucky enough to work in places where it was encouraged, or did you meet any kind of resistance to you holding on to the things that matter to you with your identity in environments where actually back then was probably seen as quite non-conformist?
Yeah. I wouldn't have been rocking a fro because at the time, I was in the city. I was in the city for quite a long time. And I think it's different, maybe a bit different now.
Yeah, I hope so.
But at the time, it definitely felt like, there was just a certain look that you needed to have. Yeah. I didn't want to stand out too much. No. It was like, do you know what? I'm trying to just navigate here. I'm trying to build something.
Yeah, you don't want to be the rebel for the cause, do you? It's just like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Normally I do, but on this instance, it was like, I've got to pay the bills.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little, right? This idea of holding on to yourself, but and one of the things I took from when we were talking about authentic leadership, Joyce, was this idea of that it can ebb and flow, right, with where you are and what you need. So as you just said, I've got to pay the bills. And I think, you talked to me a little bit about then when your son
Yeah.
came along.
Yeah.
And you were a single mum. You're
Yeah.
still working.
Yeah.
Still trying to get your foothold on your career and move on.
Yeah. That time for me was probably the time when I masked the most, because it's like, you know, I'm just working in these places where I don't know if there's anyone sort of really like me, or, you know, I just don't want to fall into a stereotype of, you know, she's, you know, a single mom. She's going to need loads of time off. She's not going to, you know, be committed to her job, all of that kind of stuff. I was trying to avoid it. And at the same time, I was operating in spaces where it was just me. And so I kind of wasn't comfortable in sharing any of that stuff. I wasn't sort of comfortable in sharing much of me at all, apart from what you got. You didn't really know very much about me outside of that space. So, and I think everything's contextual, isn't it? I am normally a rebel. I was all the way through school. I've just got a streak in me sometimes where I do the opposite of what I'm asked to do. But it was really for me about, you know, I'm going to try not to lift my head too far above the parapet, because I have to keep a roof over. I need to keep food on the table. And that's where the responsibility is. And it's challenging as a Black woman in those spaces where you have to prove yourself more, where you've had to show more, where you're qualified and competent to do something, but it feels like, you know, people have you questioning whether you are or not. I was just, you know, I'm doing too much. I'm not doing enough. I'm saying too much. I'm not saying enough. There's all that stuff that you're thinking about.
Too much.
Yeah.
Too much.
Yeah. It was contextual for me in terms of how much do I actually show of myself, versus, you know, actually I've got bills to pay.
It's a tough time.
Yeah.
Can you identify a role or a moment when you thought, actually, I am now safe to be myself?
I started feeling that way in towards the end of the time that I spent at a publishing house. You know, I really knew who I was and, you know, the direction that I felt that I was heading in. And my son was getting, you know, growing up more. And actually at that point, he was on his way over to America because he'd got a basketball scholarship. So he was going over there after his GCSEs. And so, you know, I was a bit more comfortable, but it was when I left there and I joined a kind of commercial real estate organisation, which is typically very male dominated, but I had a female MD that I reported into. I think it was there that I really kind of just became myself. I just felt comfortable to do that.
And what was it about? Was there anything about the culture in particular or was it just the support of the female MD? What was it?
I think it was the support.
Yeah.
It was the support for me.
What was she like?
Not shy and retiring, for sure. You know, and she had to navigate a space which is a very male-dominated space, real estate world, and particularly commercial real estate. And so I found that impressive. So she had a high degree of fortitude, you know, a lot of resilience. I felt I had a lot of resilience because of the childhood I'd had. That was one of the key skills that I, you know, sort of picked up from that time, a real ability to be resilient. And I think, you know, kind of working with her, I just felt I can just be me. I just feel safer. Yeah, that's what it was. So that's when I think I really became comfortable with me. I always was, but I was kind of a different Joyce at home and outside than I was probably in the office.
So how did that kind of manifest practically? How did you behave that really allowed people to see that this was, you know, were there any kind of definite shifts in how you showed up that you can say, yeah, that was me being me, maybe in terms of your management style, your leadership style, kind of how you showed up and how you worked?
I think in that role, I was probably still sort of learning about that. So I had a team, and I was sort of navigating how to manage the team as well as, you know, stepping in more confidently into that leadership team space with the broader team. And, you know, there were people in that team that I did have robust conversations at times, which I maybe in other places wouldn't have felt necessarily comfortable to do. But it's like, okay, I really believe this thing. So I am going to, you know, we're going to have a conversation about it and I might challenge things. Whereas in other roles, I might have sat back a bit because it's like, oh, don't want to sort of, you know, it's in there, but I daren't, you know, let it come out. Yeah. So I think, you know, it was that kind of thing. And then when I think the next role, which was in the creative advertising space, it was like, everybody's kind of, very much, this is who I am. People dress kind of how they want. Yeah. It's real quirky.
Where I work for years.
Yeah, it's quirky. Everybody
Creativity
was kind of coming in with their personality, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And I think that, I was really sort of stepped into that. And I think kind of feeling more comfortable and confident in myself, sort of having an EMEA role and actually travelling into Poland and building really good relationships with the MD and the CEO in Poland. It's like we found a connection point. Like his wife liked going and seeing Kahindi Wiley art gallery exhibitions. I had just been to see one. He had, funnily enough, grown up in Nigeria because his father was a diplomat. Yeah. So we were able to talk about like stew, pounded yam. It's like, I can't believe I'm in Poland talking, Perfect. But I just found a way, and I think I've been able to be really good at that. Just find a way of finding a connection.
And is that something that you think you've always had throughout? Because when I work with coachees and we talk about feeling different in an environment, one of the things we talk about playing with is this idea of finding the thing that you've got in common, because you feel like an imposter when you feel like different from the people around you. Yeah. But what you've just spoken to is when you can find that point of commonality.
Yeah.
People become less scary, you become more alike, you've got more to build on.
Yeah.
And that feels like it's a bit of a strength of yours, actually, that you might have always had. But I might be assuming then, do you think, is that something you learned, or is that something that you've always felt was innate?
I think I've always had it. And through my childhood, I was a different person at home than I was at school. At school, it was like I was a joker, I was loud. I used to write rap songs. I had a stage name of Johnny. I don't know why, but I was known as Johnny.
Oh, okay. The bloopers reel on this podcast is going to be unreal.
I think you need to join forces with.
There's going to be some pods.
Alex Chai Latte.
Yeah,
form a little band.
Yeah, I had, I was doing all of that kind of thing, and I just had an ability to be able to make friends, and I think that was. Sometimes just having that support network. So, I think I was just good at being able to do that. And even in spaces that were really challenging, like the children's home, for example, I just was able to find a connection point somehow with people, whether it's they've gotten up to something and I haven't grasped them up or, whatever it was, I've just always been able to find something outside of, in the office work or whatever that just allows me to just connect with people on a bit of a different level.
Absolutely, and I think it's a lesson that the whole world needs to adopt right now. Is look for the little things that connect us rather than look for the things that separate us.
And it's so important within organisations actually to do that. Where silos and divisions and assumptions about people can run rife in an organisation, can't they?
Yeah,
you actually need to sit two people down and get them to have a conversation, and they'll find the thing that they've got in common. They'll find some little thing.
And a lot of the work that we do is about that. It's about bringing people that don't often work together so that they can understand how alike and how much they can learn from each other and how much more they've got in common and where the strengths are there.
That's it. So you don't just label someone as a job title or a barrier, right?
Yeah.
You actually see...
Or a single mum or a black woman.
Or a label,
You
see behind the label or see behind the stereotype, right?
Yeah.
And it's so important.
It is, because we do make these shorthands for people. So I'm curious as to, you're in advertising by this point.
I was in advertising, indeed.
And feel like you're at home, feel like this is full of creative people. I wanted to be creative. If you're as close to MTV as I think this career trajectory has taken you so far. I'm not looking for MTV, right? And then you went from there to Oxfam, correct?
Yeah,
Talk to me about that, because this is very different. This is purpose.
Yeah.
And tell me about that journey.
You can tell me as well if you want.
Your ears are closed.
You can't tell me. You can only tell Lorna.
I just wanted to do something that felt really meaningful. And I'd often sort of thought about it. I loved the ad agency world and I loved the connections that I'd built there. And it's definitely, I like the creative world. It's definitely what I kind of see as home in a lot of ways. But this was different. This was challenging. This was going to be complex. This was operating in an environment where the way in which they work is anti-racist and so decolonial, feminist leadership principles, safe, all of that sort of thing, which you don't often see as a sort of way of working in such an obvious way.
It's flipped everything on its head.
Yeah, it's
as
sort
a new
of flipped.
model.
So yeah, when I was contacted about it, I thought this sounds really interesting and it's really meaty, you know, something to get my teeth into. And so yeah, I just said, put me forward. For it, not really expecting to get it. I think I got to there were quite a few stages to the interview process and a few panels and things like that. And I think the headhunter had spoken to me. He was a really nice guy, by the way, but he'd spoken to me, I think around the time of probably just before the last couple of panels, and said, look, you know, I just need to tell you that, you know, there are 3 of you sort of in these final stages. The other 2 probably got much deeper, richer sort of corporate experience. So I'm just telling
Trying to let you down gently.
So I was like, okay, so what we're saying is I'm probably like the underdog for it. And he was like, probably.
So like, challenge accepted.
I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I've been here before.
Yeah.
So I guess I just thought, I don't have anything to lose. I'm probably not going to get it anyway, but I just need to just be honest, just be real. I don't know everything. You know, I haven't been a CPO at that point for that long.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's either they take a risk on me or they go for somebody that's got their kind of long corporate, you know, in-depth experience. So we'll see how it goes. So when I was offered the role, it was like, wow, okay, they want to see something different.
Yeah.
So that's what I've tried to make sure that on coming into Oxfam, I am being real about what that is, and, you know, trying to bring a commerciality and a sharpness, you know, some of the sort of key skills that I've got into that space.
So what I took from that when you shared that story with me before, I mean, first of all, I just love a little bit of like proving somebody wrong. You know, I love that about what you said. But I think what I kind of heard in it was almost in saying that, it kind of gave you permission in a weird way to play without fear.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, fine. In that case, I'll just be myself, right?
Yeah.
I've got nothing to lose here.
Yeah.
And what that did is it unlocked even more authenticity.
Yeah.
And then that cycle, then when they went, yes, that's what we want because you've been yourself, you've been the most true, powerful version of yourself. They've gone, yes, we want that. You've recognised that that's what they've bought. And then that's given you even more permission to be it. And that virtuous circle that starts with just going, I'm just going to be myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And I can hear in your career trajectory some of those little moments of propulsion when you've seen that permission or that acceptance from somebody to just be yourself. They've seen that in you and gone, I want that bit of you, that real bit.
Yeah.
Come and do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they've given you more and you've given them more.
Yeah, for sure. I think sometimes when you're in processes like interview processes, you're thinking, what is it that the interviewers want to hear from me? What is it that they want? You're not really thinking so much about who am I and what can I sort of bring to it? And actually they should see all of that. And then a decision can be made whether or not we align, you know? So I think being at the real estate organisation, that MD gave me absolute permission to just kind of go and be yourself. And she had those conversations with me where she kind of said, you know, no matter about the fact that I've been good friends with some of the people on the leadership team for years, don't worry about that. You still do what you need to do. If you need to challenge something, that's fine. It's okay. So kind of having that. And I think, when I was selected for Oxfam, I just knew, okay, that's the sort of difference thing. So you do then have a kind of different level of confidence, I think, which is good.
Yeah, I do really love that. And I think, so I started my career in recruitment. I fell into it I did a theatre degree and fell into it. And I was recruiting a lot of people in the West End, executive assistants to kind of quite powerful people. I recruited Robbie Williams' PA at one point.
Wow.
My candidate did not get the job. Thank God, I think they dodged a bullet at that point. But And this was the moment I knew that I wanted to be an executive coach, because everybody else was like giving their candidates these long prep lists of things they should and shouldn't do, the boxes they had to fit in.
Yeah.
You know, they're looking for this, so be this. They're looking for that, so be that.
Yeah.
And I used to go out and buy my candidates rescue remedy from Boots and just go, don't be afraid. There's a little bit of alcohol in that now that I now know, right? But I just be you. Just don't be afraid.
Yeah.
If you can go into that scenario without fear, and I think that didn't stand me so well as a recruiter. Actually, it did stand me pretty well as a recruiter, because I could place people.
Yeah.
So useless salesperson, but I knew people,
Yeah.
and I knew how to help somebody. I knew how to fit somebody to culture, and I knew how to help somebody feel they could be comfortable enough to be themselves.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is gold dust.
Yeah.
Because then you know if somebody buys it, that's what they want.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
That's what they want.
Yeah. And I think you've got to sort of take the pressure of trying to read the room out of the equation a little bit, and just sort of focus on what's the message that I'm trying to get across or need to get across, or, you know, because I think it's a bit more impactful than I think sometimes when you're overly focused on what's everyone thinking, it can sort of shake your confidence. If you had some, then it does sort of shake it, you know.
Yeah.
Am I on the right track? Oh, the person's not smiling. What does this mean now? You know, you do a lot of overthinking. So it's just, you know, this is it really. This is what I think.
And so how long have you been at Oxfam now in that role?
Coming up to 2 years now.
Right.
So it's been 2 years, but it has been intense. It has been very, very intense. Lots and lots of work that we're crunching through. But I enjoy it. I enjoy the challenge. I enjoy trying to understand elements of things. Why has it happened like that? Why was it like
Staying
that?
curious.
Is there another way of doing it?
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed kind of unlocking some of that with the team, with my team as well, because it just helps everyone to think a bit more creatively about, okay, yeah, that might have been done for the last 20 years, but actually there is another way of doing it after all.
And Oxfam's got a strong legacy, right? It's an
really
organisation
strong.
that's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
It's called Oxfam because it started in Oxford because of the famine.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So purpose-led from the beginning, but purpose-led in a very different way to where the organisation is now and where it's heading.
Yeah, yeah. I think we're probably looking at a bit of a shift in how we do things. Obviously, it started off very differently to where we're trying to get to now, which is really trying to sort of move as much resource as we can to the global south, and, you know, just make sure that in the global south they have the resources that they need, that they're working with the partners that they need, so that they can develop the systems that they need, rather than us kind of telling them what they need, coming from the UK and sort of suggesting. So I think it has come a long way. There's a way to go, and you know, there is a real sort of shift in how Oxfam will be doing things in the future.
Yeah,
but it's been part of the strategy for a little while. So
yeah, and I can completely understand and see actually that kind of really solidifies the purpose, I think, when you think about those people in the global south who are closest to the work, the point of difference of the organisation. Why would you not focus the resources and the energy on supporting those people? But that principle applies, I think, in most organisations. You know, where is the real work done, and how can we remind ourselves that that's who is delivering it works in most organisations, right?
Yeah, and I think it's just kind of being able to relay those messages back so that the organisation kind of keeps focus on that.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you're operating out of the UK and you're in the kind of big office there, you can sometimes, I think in a lot of organisations, get caught up in the day-to-day of what's going on in the office. But for me, I had really just a massively profound moment. Myself and the chief exec went on a couple of country visits, and we went to visit a big project in Kenya, which was a huge informal settlement in Kenya. And we were having a look at some of the work that takes place there and some of the things that we've helped support. And then we had a trip to South Sudan as well, which is a really challenging, very challenging context. And you see that from, you know, going into the airport, it's World Food Programme planes and UN planes. It's obviously not commercial jets or anything like that. So you get an immediate sense of, you know, this is a tricky context, and you're thinking of the colleagues that you've got working in those spaces. And then you're thinking, when you meet those colleagues, you're just thinking, how do you know, kind of make things as easy, as simple as possible for them. But then there were just perfect moments of, you know, I think there was one trip that I made out to just outside of Juba, or maybe it was inside Juba on the outskirts, but it was to meet a group of female farmers. And we'd helped with some of the water irrigation systems that they could farm. And it was just really interesting. I got this picture somewhere, but we were stood in a circle, and of course they spoke Arabic. I couldn't speak Arabic. They didn't speak English. So, you know, there were a couple of translators there. But as soon as I sort of stepped into the circle, they made these really welcoming kind of greeting noises. It's just like communication just kind of transcends being able to speak, you know, a language. And at that point, I knew, okay, they're really pleased to see me here. And I do represent something different to probably, you know, maybe what, you know, the sorts of people that normally come and visit the projects. It was just really interesting because we were having this conversation. Obviously, the translator was translating between us, but we were still finding that opportunity to laugh and joke.
And that moment of connection actually came through not even using language, but just using positive sounds to connect.
It was the most wonderful trip, but obviously very, very, very challenging. No money going into the country at all at that point. So for me, in the back of my mind, as I was leaving South Sudan and heading back to Kenya to come back to the UK, it was just in my mind, you know, how do we make things a bit more simple for those colleagues? And I had that connection point back to the purpose, why we're here.
Yeah, and actually, you know what, I was going to talk about that in terms of how you keep that purpose front and centre with the colleagues at head office who may not have that opportunity to actually go firsthand and experience some of the projects and communities that you work with. What do you do to keep purpose really, really front and centre?
I think we have kind of regular communication channels and ways of colleagues being able to speak to exactly what's going on in their local context or the country that they're in or the project or programs that they've been helping to support. So it's just always making sure that the messaging and the work that we're doing is sort of front and centre as much as possible, and you know, we're sort of sharing that communication. And I think, you know, we're a campaigning organisation. You know, people know we're campaigning for a reason, and it is for us to sort of help with humanitarian crises. It's for us to be able to raise more funds so that we can sort of send those resources to the places that they need to be in. But I think, you know, people know why they're there. It's a good thing to just remind people of the work that's going on.
Yeah, keep making that purpose your North Star, right? And it's almost it's a thing that you can use then to make decisions about how you do or don't things. One of the things I was thinking as you were talking about it was like, so my background's HR as well before I did this apparently, but you can get very bogged down in, you know, what's the best initiative or project or best practice or thing. And actually, what really stood out for me as listening to you say that was none of that actually matters, right? The most important thing is that these people on the ground making the difference have got everything they need to do that well and in as efficient and safe a way as possible.
Yeah.
Whether or not we've got a 9-box grid back at head office that every manager's filling in has really got bugger all to do with that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that must have really crystallised how you think about the people strategy at Oxfam and where resources directed, because you're a charity, so resources finite, I'm guessing, and how you decide what you do and don't do.
Yeah.
I guess.
I think with people teams and HR teams, there's always a huge expectation on them. And it's almost like, you know, we can carry a shopping list of 1,000 things and everything needs to be delivered. And I think it doesn't matter what organisation you're in. Sometimes, you know, HR can be the sort of punch bag for the organisation in so many ways at times. But I think it's about thinking what's the overall strategy, you know, the overall thing that the organisation is trying to do over the next few years, and then really just kind of crystallising a strategy around that, a really kind of clear strategy with some sort of key activations, some key sort of pillars that we'll look at, and then some activations under that, and just making sure that's a co-created space for the teams, so that people have kind of bought into that. And so I think that's important, and obviously recognising that aligns to the overall strategy, which is about, our people, wherever they are, however dispersed they are.
And those stories that you listened to when you were out in the field, on the front line, I don't know what you call it, how do you bring those back to the organisation? How do you make sure those stories, because one thing that I think really stands out for me with organisations like Oxfam and very similar charities is that actually you're really good at, as you say, campaigning and telling those stories outside.
Yeah.
They're things that really connect with you when you see Oxfam campaigning. How do you bring those to life internally and then make that connection, draw that golden thread, as we call it, between, so this means this is what we must do?
It's about making sure that there's a voice, and there's an authentic voice out on the ground that's able to speak to the teams, however that voice kind of comes through, whether it comes through from a country director or somebody that's kind of campaigning in that space. It's always just about making sure that that voice comes through. And there isn't really anybody that works at Oxfam that isn't really kind of at heart massively connected to the purpose. And so I think people will be doing their own pieces of research. People are always all over the work that we're doing. In terms of an operating model, it's not, it's very different to the private sector. It's, people are there because they believe in the cause.
Right?
Yeah. Does that bring challenges?
It can bring challenges. And I think that's probably the same with any organisation. I think it can bring challenges around the alignment of priorities at times, for sure.
And wanting probably to do so much to make all the difference. Probably sometimes quite difficult on occasions to prioritise actually what's really going to drive.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There can always be a bit of a challenge around, I think, probably stewarding an organisation that is a campaigning organisation. And obviously, that's the kind of key characteristic of the organisation as well. So you don't want to dampen that.
No. It's getting that balance, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just about getting the balance. Yeah, for
and
sure.
It's that strengths theory really applied, right? This is our strength. It's our core purpose.
Yeah.
But if we over apply it in a different scenario, it can be our Achilles heel if we're not careful.
Yeah.
And I think that's the case.
Yeah.
We've worked with a variety of different organisations, and I remember working with an engineering business a couple of years ago, right? And they were phenomenal at thinking through and solving problems. But sometimes they blinking well over engineered their own stuff inside, It's like, this isn't a problem that needs like a complex engineering solution. This is something a lot more intuitive. You can go with that. I think it's knowing the difference and knowing when you can switch.
Should we return to authentic leadership?
Yes.
And I'm going to ask you a question that maybe you won't be able to answer, but I'd love it if you could. If you could distill authentic leadership, what it means to you, like the essence of authentic leadership, what would that essence be?
If I could distill
what does it mean? What does it genuinely mean to you when you show up every day to be an authentic leader?
For me, it kind of means stepping into a space, owning it. I think not masking anything, not feeling like, I'm diluting anything, diluting who I am, making myself seem smaller somehow in some shape or form to please other people, but to recognise that, me as I am, that's where the power is. That's where the real kind of leadership power is. And if I can show up like that, it makes other people feel psychologically safe enough to show up in that way.
That's beautiful. And if you could say something, right? If you could say something to 12-year-old Joyce, right? What would you tell 12-year-old Joyce now?
Oh, I tell 12-year-old Joyce that she was enough. That she was going to make it. She would be doing, really interesting things with her life. I think that's what I'd be telling the 12-year-old Joyce. It's definitely that you're enough. I think sometimes you almost forget that. It's like, what am I, what is the purpose? What am I doing here? But
I love that. I love that whole thing. We don't tell ourselves enough that we're enough.
One of the things that I work with coaches sometimes is this idea of what I call imposter phenomenon, but it's heard more commonly as imposter syndrome, right? And I think that idea that I am enough really is something that can carry you through that, even if you're going into scenarios where you're looking around feeling different and like an imposter. If you've got that in you, that's much less of a challenge for you, right? And I'm curious, is that something you've ever experienced? That sense of feeling like an imposter, and do you still experience it sometimes? And how do you counter it?
I think I probably do sometimes still experience it. It's definitely been something that through my career, less so in kind of recent years, but definitely in the earlier parts of it, I definitely experience imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon. I think there are a number of reasons why. I don't think it's a confidence thing, because I think that's just an easy get out. It's about confidence. You just need to build up a bit of confidence. It's really not that. It's about the systems that kind of underpin how you feel and how you're able to actually show up as yourself, that have you kind of questioning whether or not I should actually be here. I think for me, it's almost this sort of layered thing of, sometimes I'm like the only voice of a particular, from the BIPOC community or from a particular space in that particular room. And there's an additional pressure of, I have to represent, I have to make sure that I don't make any mistakes because there's going to be a greater consequence if I do. And, I have to be able to sort of get points across in a meaningful way. And so you've got all of that you're kind of contending with. But I think we often don't look at the systems that underpin it, that mean that actually it is difficult for people to show up. And, a lot of people suffer from imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon. And I think it's about, what are the systems and what's the culture that we've got in place that means that people aren't actually feeling able to really 100% show up in the space.
Yeah, I watched an interview with Michelle Obama once, and she said she suffered from imposter syndrome.
So this is why I don't call it a syndrome, I call it a phenomenon, because it's not a problem with you, it's a problem with the system around you.
Yeah.
Right? It's not there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with you. You are experiencing a genuine phenomena in this environment, and being able to name it and unpack that so you can identify what is it about this environment is the only way that it gets changed. It doesn't get changed by you having a little bit more confidence, as they say.
Yeah.
100% agree. 100% agree. And if there was one thing that organisations could do to create that environment where that phenomena doesn't appear for people who might feel different, what would you suggest they do?
I think it's about having a real honest approach with what the culture is and actually doing that piece of work. And it probably starts at a leadership level and it kind of works its way through the organisation. But what is the optimum culture that we need to be able to thrive, and our people need to be able to thrive, and for us to achieve our organisational goals as well. And I think that's about having a really, really honest conversation and really looking at, okay, what are the strengths that we've got in our culture, but what are the issues? And you kind of need to do that throughout the organisation so that you're really listening, at all levels. Where have we? Because you can sit at the top of an organisation, you've got no idea what's going on, because you haven't got an ear to the ground as much. So I think that's just probably a really important piece of work to do, because I think once you hear that and you start looking at what some of the themes are, you can start changing. You can start creating that. Okay, this is the culture that we want. So these are the behaviours that need to underpin it, and this is how we'll go about doing that.
And it takes a brave leadership team, doesn't it, to lean in, to be able to hear some of the truths that they might actually find quite uncomfortable, and be willing to do the self-reflection needed to do any change of behaviours that they're going to need in order to make the culture one where no one feels imposter phenomenon.
But I do love that principle of, that self-examination, that listening, and that all the way through the organisation, voices throughout. And that it's a dialogue, not an edict as well, isn't it? That, oh my God, that conversation has been so rich. So rich.
Thank you.
I feel like I'm on a journey with you, Joyce.
That's great.
I feel like I've been all over,
Yeah.
you know, everywhere, really.
Yeah.
I've been to Portsmouth, I've been to Western-super-Mare, I've been,
We've been to South Sudan.
And South Sudan.
Yeah.
We've done it all, haven't we?
Done it
And
all.
can you promise to be our friend forever?
I promise. I promise
Gosh,
to
that's a
be
lot of
friends.
pressure.
Sorry, that was
forever.
quite a lot
Yeah.
of pressure. How
Forever is a long
about
time.
until the middle of 2027?
We could definitely do that.
Can we do
long.
that?
I
Can we
reckon we
just-
could go beyond that.
Right,
to be
okay.
fair,
Like
yeah, I think
like
we
a
can go
solid
beyond that.
2028 November.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
This has been great.
It's been so wonderful. Thank you so much for your time, and to wonderful Olivia as well, who I know is possibly
Olivia.
Big
Shout
up
out
Olivia.
to Olivia.
Yeah.
Shout out to executive assistants everywhere, I
Yes,
think.
yes,
right?
yeah.
Who
Olivia needs
make
a big
it
shout
all
out.
happen.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you so much. Is there anything
Thanks
you
for
want to
having
say
me.
or leave
Yeah.
us with before we go?
I think I've said most
have.
things. Yeah, I think this has just been a great, powerful discussion,
Yeah, it
and
really has.
hopefully, you know, there's something that resonates with people out there.
There will be.
And
I
you
know
know,
there
it
will
makes
be.
a difference somewhere to somebody.
Yeah.
It
So,
does, and we're
thank you.
yeah, so privileged. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Yeah.
Thank you
You're
so
awesome.
much for having me.
Brilliant.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.